Drums of War, Chapter 46, Part 1. A Bride. Aboard the warp-speed battle wagon. Launch chanced to back out, Captain Nina Chen said for the 12th time, her voice gone thickly hoarse. Her bridge was silent. Really, she shouldn't be giving them so many lost chances. But these were her friends, and they'd followed her into this war on nothing but sheer outrage at what the Ash Chat opinion, or whatever they were called, had done. None of them were fighters. Or at least, they hadn't been. A year with the Romans had changed that. The warp-speed battle wagon wasn't made for this, but I'm going to ask it for her anyway. Just like the Wee Sing wasn't made for fighting, but they murdered her anyway. Nobody said anything, and she looked around at the shiny new stations provided by the Republican Naval Engineering Corps. Those stations connected to some new systems, some Republican, some Roman, and were all expertly installed in the old CIP hull, which held together with duct tape and hope. She kind of missed the old monitors and components that had made up the old stations, even though no, best not to dwell on that. So I don't figure on getting out of this fight alive. We started out wanting to sock 'em on the nose for real good, and show those stuck-up pricks in the Republic that the Coalition can throw it down too. Maybe we did that, maybe we didn't. We made some friends, insane friends, but the Romans they count Marcus as one of their own because of what he did, because the warp-speed battle wagon, and what she did. It wasn't just the consoles and the ship systems, but they'd done a full upgrade on her weapons and battle screens. No cost. And those engineers had apologized that they didn't just have a spare reactor laying around for her. Maybe the Republicans weren't such stuck-up pricks. And we lost some of those friends. So we started fighting for them. We would take revenge because they couldn't touch our warp-speed battle wagon. Then it turned out we were wrong. Now, it's for the Wee Sing, and for our Roman friends, and for Marcus, and to show those stuck-up pricks in the Republic Navy just how to fight. It's been an honor, Captain, Hiroshi Tanaka, her navigator, her XO, said. He didn't look at her as he spoke, which was fine, since Hiroshi was about as beautiful as a burnt block of wood. That was fine. She didn't hire him for his looks, after all. And he'd been the one to step up. Hiroshi was a good friend. Systems check. We're in for a fight of our lives. Grief mingled with profound gratitude was mingled in the tears running from Captain Lena Chen's eyes as the bridge crew began to sound off their checks. Strapped into a drop pod waiting in the tube of the Robin Williams. It had been decades since the last time Major General Eric George was in a combat drop. If he recalled correctly, he had been a lieutenant colonel then. And it was yet another one of those little Terran nations who thought they were immune to the Pluto Compact, since they were founded after the ratification and never became signatories. Didn't matter where or when, or apparently what species a person was, there was always someone trying to own their other people. The more things change, he found that he still hated the wait. He took a deep breath and cast his mind back to his most recent cherished memory. He had been in his starkly appointed office with two of his sons, Johnny and Linus. Properly, they were Captain Jonathan George and Sergeant Linus George, but to him, they were forever Johnny and Linus. In any case, someone with a line to the Almighty had put in a word for a minor miracle, because the three of them were all off duty at the same time, and the last of his surviving sons had been neither in surgery nor asleep, and had taken their joint call. General George thanked the saints and the martyrs for that. They had gathered around the holodeck, eager to see Pete for the first time in a year, and had been disappointed. The general understood the reason why Pete didn't turn his loaned tablet's camera on, but he'd still wanted to see his son. He didn't much care that he'd been surgically altered so that he could infiltrate the Exarch, and he was fairly certain that Johnny and Linus hadn't cared either. But Pete had always been a bit self-conscious about that sort of thing. "Hey, Pops," he said brightly. Linus had punched his big brother in the arm and glared, prompting Johnny to say, "Not just Pops, we're here too." "Oh, hi, Johnny. I heard you're a captain now. Congrats." "Good on you for making corporal," Linus had said warmly. "You did good work for us. You and the rest of the DRS boys." "Thanks, sir. And sorry for letting them recruit me away from the Lost Boys. I figured maybe I could do a bit better deep behind enemy lines." Here Peter let out a bitter laugh. "Sure showed me." Knock that off, the general remembered snapping at the self-pity he heard in his courageous son's voice. I will allow nobody to denigrate the work you did, and that includes you. Aye, sir, the young man replied almost reflexively. It's just that I can't make another drop. Can't trust Orcs in a drop. Not the spinal ones, anyway. And I'll need those to walk. Sir, I'm angry. I did the right thing. I know I did. He was a kid, a little boy, starving and cold and crippled. And I did the right thing, and what I did get for it? A fucking Sneakyverse, fucking brass. They want to medical me, MH medical me, so I can't turn it down. Johnny had scowled. Just because you got an eval doesn't mean that they're going to MH medical you. You just survived a pretty rough injury. And how long were you trapped? Couple weeks? Pete had scoffed dismissively. I'm trained to not crack from extended isolation. But I had Gideon to keep me company. Kid saved my damn life, all told. Somehow he found water. And if not for that, maybe I wouldn't be here to bitch about the brass. You realize, General George had said, that I have stars in my collar? Not in my chain of command, Pete quipped quickly. You don't count as fucking brass. That had drawn the inordinate chorus of laughter from the three men clustered around the holodesk. They hadn't had a real laugh together in too long. How's the boy? The grizzled general asked as the laughter died down. There had been a pause, for Pete said, Brave, damn brave. Gideon barely has a clue what's going on. We keep showing him things he calls mighty or powerful or great in wisdom, and he still wants to know what I think of his ideas. He still wants to understand us. They give him watching little kids' language learning stuff to try and see if he can learn standard English or commercial English. Hope so. It's hard to explain things to someone whose language doesn't have the words like mercy or promise. Jesus Christ, Linus had sworn bitterly and received a cuff in the back of the head for taking the Lord's name in vain, or his older brother. Aye, it's a clusterfuck to wrap my brain around. I wish I was smarter, since I'm the only one aboard this tub who really speaks his language. Everyone else uses an external translator for him and their implants for themselves. Makes him feel like he's speaking to, I guess, like two half-divine figures of power and wisdom. I'm worried about him. And your plans for the future? General George had asked. If the medical brass doesn't fuck me, I'm going to put in for an instructor's posting. I think I might know a thing or two about sharpshooting, maybe enough to teach. Better than being discharged before duty's been done. General George had gotten the impression that Pete had shrugged at saying that. You know I can't do anything about MH, General George told him. But for the other, I might be able to put a good word in for you. Thanks, Pop. Gotta go. I'm going to get the dye pulled out of my skin today. And they're here to tell me that it's going to hurt just as much as when they put it in. Give the bastards hell, Pops. Make them remember the name, the among star tides we sing. That was a good memory. Making more like it was why he was strapped into his drop pod. Remembering made the shaking stop. In the CNC Center aboard the Robin Williams. This was it, the largest tactical command of his entire career, and the third time in the history of the Second Star Rapid Response Group that the whole flotilla was engaged in a fleet-level action. And Rear Admiral Upper Half Nelson Jock had made it happen as a matter of honor. Speed and firepower were his business, and he intended on distracting that. However, he had no illusions about just what his plan entailed. Ships are going to sink, good Republican boysmen were going to die, but never once in the history of the Second Star Rapid Response Group had a ship gone down with R&I in the tube. He didn't intend on starting now. He, like everyone else, wore his back armor in anticipation of action, and the ship's atmo had been pumped into storage. A voidsman couldn't be voided if his ship didn't void atmo in the hull bridge. Unlike everyone else, he stood at a wide, ovular table displaying the rapidly approaching battlefield. Everyone was strapped in at the stations, and his staff was going through the flotilla-level checks at their second stations with built-in redundancies ahead of action. He was of the belief that if he sat down, the captains would all be able to tell, and a speech could be given from one's feet. All right, boys and girls, Admiral Jock began. We have a job to do, and it's just like our job always is. Get the lost boys' boots down without spending them in the void. 3 generations of our formation hasn't seen a single one of our fine ships fail in that duty, and our boys in the tube are counting on us to keep that record intact. That's our victory. our condition we strive for, boys and girls, and if we fail to get even one of our lost boys' boots down to their work, then we might as well have been defeated. Make no mistake, we sail right into the enemy's teeth, but we are the spearhead of the Republic. We might get chipped, but we're cutting a path for a thrust to the enemy's heart. Here he paused as the entire flotilla translated into real space, and before them was arrayed hundreds of thousands of Exarch ships in a defensive grid about their home world. We'll start by shooting them in the back about 17 hours from now. Get a slingshot count done and open fire. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.